Hey, it's Tim here. Now, for a long time, I've always tried to make videos on this channel that really help everyone get to grips with Tableau, but a large part of my audience have actually been people who build dashboards. And it dawned on me the other day, is there a guide for people who don't build dashboards? And so I went to Google, which is where I start all my research before I make a video, and I simply typed that question in. And when you hit an answer, I was really surprised to find that there's not one resource on the homepage. And for the record, I'm searching incognito. So at this level, Google doesn't know who I am. I'm not signed in. It's not sort of biased with my previous search history. This should be what most people see on the internet when they search how to use a Tableau dashboard. The first hit you get is how to create a dashboard. The next one is how to create a dashboard. Viewing a dashboard, when you expand on that, it actually goes into a menu setup for creating a dashboard again. And the videos are all about creating dashboards. You kind of get the picture. Everything here, apart from this one resource from 2012, is about creating dashboards. Everything else is about building dashboards. So in this video, we're going to settle that score. I'm going to show you how to use a Tableau dashboard. And if you've never built a dashboard, you're the ideal audience. If you're never going to build a dashboard, you're also the ideal audience. And this is really going to be a video targeted at people who don't even have to think about building dashboards, but do have to use a Tableau dashboard at some point in their day-to-day work. I'm also going to try and keep it as simple as possible. So I'm actually going to be logging in as a viewer. A viewer is essentially a specific Tableau license that allows you to have access to a specific set of Tableau features. It's the most basic license you can get, and it's ideally pitched to people who just need to use dashboards to get their job done. Another version of this license might be something called the Tableau Explorer license. And in this license, you do get a little bit more capabilities. I won't cover those in this video, but if you have an Explorer license, you will be able to do many of the things I'm talking about here to use a dashboard as well. Now, if I go over to my Tableau Online instance, you can see that I'm logged in as a viewer. And viewers have a very limited sort of view of Tableau, and they probably don't know it because for them, they just know what they see. And I've assumed that I'm logging in for the first time. So you can see that here in this homepage, we've got this blue welcome banner, and that pretty much just tells you, hey, you've arrived. This is where analytics is served in the Tableau platform. Start exploring. Now, I tend to close this straight away because it's actually getting in the way, and you can see that you get a little notification here to tell you that it's gone. If you want to bring that back, you can click on this change settings option here, and when you do that, it takes you to your settings. And if you scroll down all the way to the very bottom, you'll see this little message here that says welcome banner. Tick that again, save the changes, and now when you go back to the home page, which I'm going to click on here on the left hand side, you can see that the banner is back again. Okay, so if you get rid of that and you actually want to bring it back because you don't know what it meant or you just want to read it again, that's how to set it back up. Let me close this now for good. We're not going to bring it back, and now you can see we're on this page. Now, on this page, we have different sections. In the middle of the page, we have a recent sections here at the top, recommendations just below that. And if I keep going down, I don't have much more. Now, depending on your organization, you might have other things available on this page. And those are all essentially sort of quick links to everything we've got on the left-hand side menu. So on the left-hand side, I've got a simple menu system that allows me to go back to this page, which is the home page. My favorites, if I've had any particular ones saved, you can see I have none. Recent items that I've looked at or worked on, things that have been shared with me explicitly by other people, recommendations, things that Tableau thinks I should take a look at because other people like me are looking at them. And then as we go further down, you can see you get this little line, and then we have this new area called collections. Again, collections are just a group of content that have been grouped together from lots of different places, and they've been put in one place. Think of it as like a folder with lots of different files or documents in them, but those documents could have come from lots of different departments or lots of different parts of the organization. It's just another way of sharing content. Explore allows me to look at everything that I can see and I have access to. This is a little bit of a daunting place to go to. You have to understand a little bit about projects and folders, so don't worry too much about this. The best way to think of this is just imagine this as the file system for visualizations. Essentially, each one of these projects or folders allows you to go to different parts of the business, and inside of those, you'll find different types of content. So if I go to the samples folder here, you'll see that I have 4 sample bits of content. 3 of them are workbooks and 1 is a data source. You don't need to worry too much about that, but that's essentially how this all works. If you find another folder in here, then you just go another level into that folder and it becomes a bit like your desktop. You've got folders and folders. In Tableau, we call these projects. Now, if I go back to the home page, you can see this is where I land. This is where I arrive every single time. And what I can start to do is actually save some things to favorites. Now, if you see something in your recents tab that you'd like to save into your favorites, just go ahead and hit the star underneath the item. So if you see here, I can just go ahead and hit the star and that will actually go into my favorites, and you'll see that Tableau creates a new section immediately showing me my favorites on the homepage. And this is why favoriting items is good, because they appear on your homepage and it's going to save you a whole ton of hassle in the future every time you log in. So I'll go back to my recents area here, which has now gone further down. I'll also save this overview to my favorites, and I'll also go down here and I'll have a look at this root scout and I'll save that to my favorites as well. 3 items in my favorites. We're pretty much good to go. I've set everything up the way I want. The other place to look, just before we move into a dashboard itself, is the search bar here on the top right hand side. You can search for pretty much anything. So you can search for people, you can search for content, it's just all there. So in this case, I'm going to search for something called an overview. And you can see that when I search, Tableau looks across the whole entire site. It gives me a nice visual sort of guide for what's going on, and it goes and finds everything with that name in a nice clear way. There is this sort of little section marker here at the top that says me there's 6 views. If I click on that, it actually takes me to those 6 views, and you can see that everything is set out really, really nicely. Bear in mind that in this particular page, you're now in this search page. So everything here is related to the search results of the thing you just searched. If I go back by clicking on that, we go back to the home page again. So now you know how to search, you know how to sort of navigate the site. Let's actually get to a dashboard and see how it works. I'm going to click on this overview dashboard. You might already have seen this on your own Tableau instance. It's actually the default workbook that ships with Tableau, and it's something that authors sometimes use for testing and capabilities. Now in this interface, you can see the dashboard loads straight away. And I have 3 core sections. At the top, I have this blue bar, which is essentially just a breadcrumb bar. On the left-hand side, it tells us where things are going and where we've come from to arrive at this piece of content. And on the right-hand side, we have a few basic sort of controls that we can use. But again, don't worry too much about this. We're just going to maintain our focus on the dashboard itself. On the next section down, you can see I have something called a toolbar. And the toolbar starts to look intimidating. And it's worth highlighting that you might not be able to see everything that I can see here. And that is because authors, the people who build your dashboards, can essentially disable some of these features because they don't necessarily want you to be able to do some of these things, or those experiences haven't been curated and governed properly by the organization, and so they've disabled those. A good example is subscribing to this by email. In some organizations, the email capability has not been enabled, so you can't subscribe because essentially the Tableau server needs to be able to email things out. If I go to the download option here, you'll see that it's available, but in some organizations, downloading data is sort of a taboo. They don't let you download anything from any particular data visualization or anything that has access to any sort of data set. So just depending on your setup, the author, and how everything is set up in your organization and its culture, some of these settings here will not be available. Okay, so just bear that in mind. Now, if I go down, you can see that I'm actually now in the dashboard. This big title here is the title of the dashboard. And basically everything below this little bar here in the middle is actually just part of your dashboard. Okay. In some contexts, this bar here can load at the bottom. Depends if you're going to an embedded view or not. But if you don't find it here at the top, look at the bottom. Sometimes that's where it is. Now, when we get to the dashboard, it's not always apparent that there's interactivity built into the dashboard. Most good authors should give you a guide, like a PDF or a PowerPoint, showing you how to use the dashboard. This is really good because it shows you where all the features are, and it gives you a little bit of intuitive guidance about how to go about using the dashboard. It shouldn't be hard to use a dashboard. If you're finding it hard to use a dashboard, maybe have a word with your author and ask them if there's anything they can do to improve the user experience. And when you do so, be sure to mention the pain points. For example, it's hard to find this when I'm looking for this in my day-to-day work. When you term things like that, the author typically starts to better understand what you're trying to do with something and starts to make those decisions as they build the dashboard, rather than you having to wait for this whole feedback loop to go around in circles. Right, one of the first things I'm going to do is I'm just going to go into my dashboard and I'm going to click on one of these items. You can see as I hover over, I get these sort of tooltips, and these tooltips are great. They're fascinating because they give you this sort of deep dive. But in essence, sometimes these are distracting. Now, I can't switch this off. Only the author can switch this on and off. So again, this is one of those user interactivity things that you should feed back to your author to say, hey, these tooltips are great, but every time I hover on something, they just pop up. I don't want them to pop up instantly when I hover over them. That's something they can change, but you unfortunately can't. Now, if I click on this particular region here in Germany, you can see that a couple of things happen throughout the whole visualization. And in essence, what I'm doing by clicking on that item is filtering the whole dashboard to that item that I've just clicked on. This is known as an action. Actions are used by authors to enable specific interactivity like this. But for you, you can just think of them as a filter. And with this filter, all you're doing is you're clicking on the thing you'd like to filter with, and it's applying that change throughout everything in the visualizations. Now, sometimes an author won't set that to apply to everything. They might only set it to apply to one chart or one set of figures. It just depends on how they've set it up. So if you click on something and you don't see everything else changing, that's because essentially the author has designed it slightly differently. And again, you can go back to them and ask them, hey, when I click on this, could you make it so that it changes all these other items that I'm actually quite interested in? So that's one way of filtering a dashboard. It's a very simple thing. You click on the data item and everything around it maybe sometimes changes depending on how the author has set it up. Okay, this time I'm going to head to this chart here on the right hand side, and you can see that I have a chart with essentially 3 sections. One for furniture, one for office supplies, and one for technology. If I hover over these items, again, you get the information in the tooltips. And again, this is really useful supplementary information. But what I want to do is actually filter using this header item here in furniture. I don't want to have to click on a data point here. I want to filter on just this section across the whole entire visualization. So let's see what happens. If I click on that here, you'll see that everything does change, but notice that the numbers change, but my highlighter is slightly off. Again, this is a weird sort of design issue. And again, sometimes you might come across this when the author has set something up and there's a bug. So again, do send feedback to an author or to someone and ask them, hey, I'm clicking on this thing, but it's sort of grayed out the numbers. Now, the numbers are filtering, so I can actually see them correctly there. If I deselect furniture here, you'll see that it goes back to 96.5. If I select it again, you can see that it's sort of not working the way it should. So when you see little things like this, if there's something that looks unusual, it's sort of hard to know what's normal and what's not normal, because you might assume that this sort of behavior where everything is grayed out when you select it is how Tableau works. Just be sure to check those items with whoever's built it. Normally they should have some sort of feedback mechanism and you can feed into them there. Now, if I go to this bottom one, which is broken down by segment, let's deselect furniture here and go down to the bottom. You can see consumer, corporate, and home office. When I click on those, nothing happens. And essentially, this particular chart has not been configured to filter anything. So you can see that it's just behaving like a static chart. It's not designed to filter anything else. So when you don't find interactions, that's absolutely fine. But if you think they make sense, do send that feedback on to whoever's building it so they can do that. I keep saying that a lot because you start to realize that as a viewer, a lot of what you'd like to do sometimes is possible, but it's not actually been enabled by the author. And there could also be sometimes a skills gap where the author is, building a dashboard, but maybe they're not familiar with the full feature set of Tableau. So again, work with them and ask them, hey, can I add this? And they might actually be able to find a way of doing it if they know that a user is going to actually use that feature. So it's a good way to motivate authors to get the kind of features you want into the product. Now, the last area on this dashboard is I'm going to go over here on the right-hand side, and you can see that I have this sort of filter area. Now, typically on a Tableau dashboard, you will have an area to the right or that pops up at some point on the screen that has a bunch of controls. Now, with these controls, you can essentially control the dashboard again. So if you see here, I've got this drop-down option. If I deselect all, the whole entire chart goes blank because essentially I've filtered everything out by deselecting all. If I just tick central, then the chart here will come back, but this time it's only showing me data for central. Okay, if I deselect central, everything will go out again. And if I deselect north, everything comes back out again. Now, you'll notice that that interaction takes a bit of time. The reason it takes a bit of time is because Tableau is an analytics tool. So it's having to work with either a database or some other information to help sort of show you what you need. But that means there's a little bit of thinking time between these. Let's say I wanted to quickly set up north and south and central. And I didn't have to click on those three, then wait for the chart to do its thing. Maybe I've got a drop down with 20 items. Well, there's actually a better way to do this. What you can do as a little hack is you can go over here to the top left-hand side and select this pause option. What this does is it stops Tableau from updating the view anytime you change something. So if I now go to my region area here and I deselect central and north, you can see that the chart hasn't updated to show me what's going on. What it has done is it sort of grayed out the whole page to show me that, hey, this view needs an update. So if I go over back here to the top left-hand side and hit resume, everything comes back and it loads. And this is great when you've got maybe a drop down with 20 items and you need to select 8 of them manually ad hoc. This is going to save you a lot of time, because if you're going through and selecting each of them one by one, you're going to be increasing the amount of time it's taking, because each time you change something, it has to load the data. And while it's doing that, you kind of really can't use the visualization or the interface. So that's something to be aware of. Now, you can also see there's another item here, which is a date filter. Now, these are a bit tricky because sometimes most people think they have to use these sliders. You can actually just click on them and just get a date picker straight away. So don't sort of take interfaces for, face value. Click around, see what will happen. You can't break the visualization. You can't break it for anyone else. This is your experience. And if you want to reset anything or go back to how it was at the beginning, there's a nice big fat revert button here at the top. And what that will do is it will take you back to how the visualization was loaded. So if you just want to start again, you've messed something up, maybe the selection isn't quite right, that revert button is going to help you. Okay. If I go back and I'm deselect an option here, you can see that it goes to central. And then if I go again and select north, it's going to go forward again. And all these options are sort of being saved in Tableau sort of intelligence, right? It's remembering these steps. And I can actually go back here to the top and you can see there's an undo and redo function. Essentially, if I undo, then it takes me back a step, and I can undo again and it takes me back one more step. But then I can also redo by going forward. I can go forward one more step, and it's remembering all of these steps. And every time you do that, it just allows you to sort of play around with some of these options. Sometimes maybe things don't sort of work out the way you want and you want to go back to the previous step, then forward again. This lets you do that in a very, very nice way. Now you can see that here that the spinner sort of froze, but it's essentially loaded up fine. If I go to redo again, you can see that it's loaded great there. So everything is set up the way I wanted it to. Let me go back into this region filter, select everything again, and we'll go back to these little items here in the bottom. Now, the last thing you'll see here is like a profit ratio legend. This is actually linked to the performance on this map. So sometimes the legends and the information you need is not necessarily next to the visualization or next to what you need. Again, if the chart has been well documented, this shouldn't be a problem. You can see there's also a profit ratio filter here. If I slide this a little bit, you can see that it works just as you'd expect, but I can also go in there and type it. Now, the thing with percentages here is that notice that it's sort of displaying it as 47%, or let's click out of this, minus 72. But when I go to type it, it's actually the numerical value that I need to type in. So minus 71.5. So if I wanted to change this to 75%, minus 75, I just hit minus 0.75. And there we go. Okay, the last thing I'm going to show you is this export button here at the very bottom. Now, when I click on the export button, the author's actually built something in for me that allows me to export a section of this data. And depending on what I can see and what I can't see, I actually get this ability to do this. So I can say specific sheets from this dashboard or specific sheets from this workbook. So let's say sheets from this workbook. You can see that I'm on the overview here. So I'm going to select that. I'm going to hit download, and what it actually does is it gives me a nice image. So let's go ahead and look at this. Now it's actually given me a PowerPoint presentation rather than an image. The author has baked this into the settings. So now when I open that in PowerPoint, you can see that it opens up and it's called Export Test. And there's my chart, my images in PowerPoint ready to go for whatever meeting I need it for. And so this is a nice way of going to your dashboard, setting everything up, making sure it's perfect, then hitting that export button for the PDF if it's an option, and being able to sort of go from there. Now, what if the author hasn't given you that button? Is there another way to do this? Absolutely. If you close PowerPoint here and we just go back to the view and we go back to our toolbar, you'll notice that we have a host of items here across the top. So let's start going through those. If I click on the first one on the right hand side, you can see that it allows me to go full screen. Very handy in case I'm in a presentation and I need to show people a chart, or I need the focus of the meeting to just be the chart. Really, really nice feature to have. If I click on that little X at the top of the screen again, it goes back. So you see this little sort of square icon here. If I click on that, it goes back to how I had it before. Really cool. If I've been given the ability to, I can actually leave comments for other people. So I can say, hey, at Tim, this looks great. Let's chat about this. And when I do that, I can also attach exactly what I'm looking at here. So if I go in here and just deselect North, let's say that I'm looking at the Central and South region, and I think this looks great. If I click on this little paperclip and square, it's actually going to take a snapshot of this and save it with the comment. You can see that it just loads it up here on the bottom right hand side. And now when I post this comment, it's a bit like taking a snapshot and adding it to the comment. And now this is visible. It also sends a notification to that person via email or via Slack if they have that set up, and they're able to click on that and come directly here and see the exact same thing that you've clicked. Just to show you what that looks like, let me revert this back to the very beginning. I'm going to close this comment tab so you can't see any comments. Go back in, open the comments tab so that you can see comments, and notice that the region here selected to all. I'll go back out and hit view. And you can see that it loads that old view back. And now you can see Central and South are selected. So now that's a really, really good way to share information with other people, both on Slack and here inside of Tableau as well. Now, the next feature is the download function. So when you click on this, you get a range of other settings. You get image, the data, which is grayed out. I'll explain that in a second. Crosstab, PDF, PowerPoint, and Tableau Workbook. Now, as a viewer, you can't download the Tableau Workbook. That's not allowed, but you can download all the other options. An image will give you exactly that. Let's have a go at that. Let's collect an image. And when you do that, you get, again, this option of where to save it. If I hit it to the desktop, click on that, you can see that the image loads up straight away here in Windows. Perfect. If I go back, go to download, this time you'll see that the data is grayed out, okay? And if you see this little tooltip, it says click the view to enable data and cross-tab download. This is not really that clear. What it actually means is, look, Tableau doesn't know which data set you'd like to download. And so it wants you to click on a chart or in the visualization, and it's going to use that to download the data. So this time, let me do this. Let me click on this chart, and for the record, it looks like I'm clicking in white space. That is exactly what I'm doing. I'm going to click in that white space. You didn't even see anything happen on screen. Now I go to download and you can see, oh, still nothing there. Okay. Very, very bizarre. Now, if I click on Office Supplies though, go back to download, you can see the data does appear. So it wants me to click on something very specific. Okay. You have to click on some sort of element of grouping, a header, something on a map for it to grab the data. If I wanted to click on everything, if I wanted to select furniture, technology, and office supplies, what I could do is I could select the axis here, for example, and then go back to download, and you can see the data option is open as well. Or I could hold Control and select each of these items. Notice that as I do that, it's firing off the actions and filtering everything. And now if I go to download, you can see the data is there again. So if I click on data, what it's going to do is give me the summary of the data. So it's not going to give me the full data. That's not allowed unless you're an explorer who has explicit access to download the full set of data. But it does give me the summary of the data, and it gives me the first 200 rows as an example. If I download all the rows as a text file, it opens it up. It actually generates a CSV. Let's save that to my desktop. Let's open that in Excel, and boom, there we go. We've got the file in Excel, and you can see it's got a little bit of the formatting as well that it's picked up from Tableau. And now I can use this data to do whatever I need to do. I hate showing people that feature because essentially that's literally becomes the biggest use case for this. It's really frustrating. But yeah, that's just sort of how it is sometimes. So if you go back to this dashboard, you can see that's how to download data. Now, if I go back to the download option, we've also got a crosstab. So let's go ahead and click crosstab. You'll see that it then asks me which chart that I want the cross. It will then ask me which chart I want the crosstab from, and also which file. So this is a bit like the option we've just used, except for this actually lets you choose which chart it's going to come from. So I'm going to choose the sales map, and I'd like it to come out as an Excel. Last time I did CSV. Now I'm going to choose Excel. We're going to save it to the desktop. Open up that file. And here we go. And you can see we get a crosstab. Now the crosstab was probably the worst format here because it's got the countries. And of course, some of these cities are only going to be available in one of these countries. You can't have Antwerp in Austria, Germany, and Italy. It just doesn't exist. So crosstab wasn't the best format here. Maybe a summary data set would have been a better thing. So just bear that in mind. The thing you're downloading isn't ideally suited to a crosstab. Don't use a crosstab. Use something like the summary view and just go ahead and download the data like this. So if I click here on the map, I can go to the data and you can see the summary data is in a much better format. I even get the latitude and longitude. I can go off and use that in a much better way. So just think about what you're downloading and how you want it to sort of work. Let me just close this tab here and let's go back to the download option. If I click it again, there's an option to grab a PDF. Now, what I always say to people is that it's so tempting to choose a paper size on this page. Don't do that. Never choose a paper size in this setting. I know it sounds counterintuitive and you might want to print an A4 or something like that. But here's the thing, PDF file format already handles this for you when you go to print. So there's no need to define it here in Tableau. Just go ahead to this drop down and choose unspecified. Choose your orientation and landscape or portrait, whatever one you want to use. Landscape would work better with this particular one. I want to download this particular view. You can select specific sheets from this dashboard, or you can just go ahead and do anything. I'll show you how to use this in a little bit more detail shortly. There's a bit of scaling. Again, just set it to automatic because we've chosen an unspecified paper size. This is generally the best setting to use. I'll show you why. If I hit download, Tableau will think about it. It will generate the PDF and there it is. There's my PDF. Let's open that. And you can see it opens it up for me here in Chrome because this is my default sort of PDF viewer when I'm just on my desktop. If you've got something like Adobe Acrobat, it will open it in that instead. Now, what I can do over here in the print settings is I can, of course, specify my paper sizes specifically for the printer that I want. And the settings are endless here. Okay, you don't need to specify this in Tableau. The other thing you'll get when you do this is you'll get a file that is much, much higher resolution. So if I just zoom in here, notice how crisp the text stays all the way through. That's because it's basically a vector item. Now, the map doesn't do the same thing. Maps are pretty hard to sort of keep consistent because of the way all this is done. But if I was to zoom in again, and let's go all the way to the right, you can see that even the charts stay crisp and nice and detailed. If you set a paper size and you try and do the same thing, you don't always get consistently the same quality as you zoom in or you make things larger. So again, unspecified as a paper size is going to give you the highest level of detail in that PDF and you're going to be fine. So let's go back out, go to download again. And the last one is PowerPoint. We've already seen an example of this. So let's select this view. Download. We'll do another export test, open it up again. And this is what our button was doing essentially. It was creating one of these for us without having to use the button. So in essence, you can see that the button here is quite handy because it gives me a specific feature. But on the other hand, this download option gives me all the features I could want. So you don't necessarily need to have it built into the dashboard. If it's been enabled, you'll be able to do it over here as well. Now, you might see this interface for choosing this view or specific sheets from this dashboard or specific sheets from this workbook. Essentially, this is talking about which specific item you want to download. And you can kind of see that you get this sort of different choices as you go through. Now, the only one to really talk about is specific sheets from this dashboard. This will give you each of these charts as their own thing. So if I go in here, for example, and I select the sales map, and then we say unspecified, remember, automatic, and we can choose a landscape for this. I think that's going to be better for the map. Hit download. What it will give me is just essentially that sales map. And it's a nice way for me to sort of isolate that and just see what's going on. So if you wanted to do that and you wanted to generate that, that's how to do it. It's really super easy. You don't need to sort of stress too hard about it, okay? So that's everything in the download option. It's pretty thorough. You're going to be pretty much set. The next option is the share option. If I go ahead and click on that, I get this nice interface. I can then go ahead and tag a colleague here. So I can say, hey, Tim, what's going on? Now, in this particular setup, You can see that I can just actually just type a username. I was treating it like a comment. You don't need to do that at all. I can just go ahead and type a name and it will find that person. I can go ahead and type their email, or if I know their enterprise ID, I can sometimes even type that, and again it will find them absolutely fine. The user is going to need to be part of the Tableau server. That's how it knows their name, essentially. So if you try and type someone's name in here and they don't exist on the Tableau server, it won't come up. So therefore you won't be able to share it with them. What you could do is you could copy this link though and send it to them in an email. And then when they get access to Tableau, they'll then be able to click on that link and get the access if they've got the access to see that particular item. So if you want to send something to someone preemptively because you know they're joining the organization, copying this link and putting in an email will be a nice way to do that. And then once they arrive, you can maybe come back and share a bunch of things with them. But that's just sort of a mechanic you have to work around and see what's best for you and your organization. Let me close this share view and I'll go back to this option here, which is subscribe. Now, if emails have been set up, you can actually have this view on this dashboard land in your inbox every single week or however often you want. The first thing to do is to choose what you want to see, this particular view or the entire workbook. The entire workbook will go and get everything. So not just this specific tab I'm on, but every other tab. This dashboard only has one tab, so we don't need to worry too much. But if I go back to this view, this is going to be all that I get. The formats I can have is an image, a PDF, and both. So this is a really nice thing to have. So I'm going to choose a PDF in this particular case because if something's interesting, I'd like to be able to forward it. And I think a PDF sometimes works a little bit better in that instance. Remember what I said about paper size. Never choose the paper size. Go to unspecified. Choose your format. Create a subject and call this weekly report. And you can add an additional message and then you can pick a schedule. Okay. Now the schedule, you can pick here on a selected schedule or when data refreshes. Okay. Now these are sort of two options and they sort of don't make sense unless you've used Tableau for a while. Essentially the data in Tableau can refresh on a schedule. The author worries about this. You don't need to worry about it. The author worries about this. You don't need to worry about it. But why this is useful is that sometimes in organizations, the data is not refreshed that often because essentially it doesn't change that often. So if a data set is only maybe changing once a week, then you might be better off choosing this option here. But you need to make sure that the data source does actually refresh, because otherwise the first time you get this, you'll get it and then you won't ever get anything again until it updates. And so some people, it's actually quite nice to have this schedule selected because then even if the data hasn't updated, they're still getting that ping and it prompts them to go and say, hey, why hasn't this data been updated in 2 weeks now? If I scroll down to the bottom, you'll see a schedule. This is largely set up by your admin. Now, your admin is the person who controls the whole entire Tableau server. They set up these schedules and you can essentially pick from the schedules depending on what's going on. Now, a lot of these are actually pretty smart. So you can go in here and choose weekly, hourly, whatever you want to do. This is sort of set up for you to do whatever you want. The data updates are done on a completely different schedule. Those are sort of set in stone. So this scheduling is actually quite powerful. You can go in and set whatever you want, but just bear in mind that you might be getting email updates at a different frequency to how the data is being updated. That's why this option here to use a data refresh is there. But again, like I said, if you want the prompt, then just get it at the same time every week. Let's say weekday, daily, every Monday, Tuesday, not a Sunday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. I can choose a specific time. So let's go ahead and choose, what should we choose here? Let's choose 9 a.m. in the morning. Let's say 9:10 in the morning, just after I've signed in. And you can see the time zone that it's using for this as well. And there's a little link at the bottom to go manage the subscriptions. I won't click on that and deviate off course, but if you do click on that, you can go and see all the things you've subscribed to and delete them from one place. If you want to manage that, it's a bit like unsubscribing from emails. There's an interface place for that to do. So if I go ahead and hit subscribe, you can see that I get this little notification at the top saying I've created a subscription and we're pretty much good to go. Metrics are super cool. In this particular setup, I'm a viewer, so I can't create any metrics. So if someone has created a metric, I can view the metrics there. There's not much to say about this other than essentially a metric allows you to track one particular KPI from a dashboard. It always has to come from a dashboard. So if, let's say you wanted to track furniture sales, you could ask an explorer or someone who has elevated access to create a metric linked to the furniture sales. Essentially, they'd click on this item and then this furniture value here would show up here as a line item. Okay, so that's something really useful to be aware of. Let me just quickly enable one so you can see what it looks like. Okay, so I'm going to refresh this, and just like that, we should have a metric available. Okay, so I'm just going to go to my metrics tab, and you can see, voila, I have a metric. And now this metric here is specifically tracking the sales of furniture, and it's not tracking the yellow item, it's tracking the blue item. So just the sales, and you can see the current value today is down 24.28%. And I think this is from a specific value. If I actually click on it, you see it takes me off to a view. So it's basically saying that it's down from November 2019, and that change there is 24.28%. As I hover over it, you can kind of see the number changing over time. But it's connected to this visualization. You can't create them just off some other data set. Has to be based on a visualization item. And again, you can't create this as a viewer. Only an explorer or a creator can actually go in and create these and set these up. So if you want to use these, make sure someone is setting them up for you so that you can do that. Okay, let's close that, go back. You can set up alerts on a particular dashboard. Now, to set up an alert, you need to do a couple of things. Okay, now if I click on this axis here, you'll see that I have nothing set up here, and you'll see that it's not letting me do anything. Now again, just like metrics, alerts need to be set up for you by an explorer. So let me go ahead and set up an alert on this page, and then we're going to see what it looks like. Now, the reason I can't see any is because the author hasn't actually enabled them for me. So whoever's created the alert hasn't set it up for me to see. So what I've done in the background is I've changed that. So I've now gone and enabled those alerts to be visible to other people. And if I go ahead and refresh this again, and I go back into the alert section, you can see that I can now see an alert. And what I can do is I can add myself to it. So if I know there's an alert there that someone has set up, I can already see who a recipient is. I can add myself to that alert, and you can see that I've been added. When I do that, I get this actions tab here where I can remove myself from that action and alert as well. So it's a really good, nice thing to be able to do. If you see an alert that you find useful, again, set it up. Now, it's sort of strange because as a viewer, this should be something you should be able to set up, but for whatever reason, it's not a current capability. So if you want to be able to set these up and use these, ask someone on an Explorer or create a license to create them for you, and then you're going to be in a good spot. Go back to this top item here, which is called View Original. Now, this is called a custom view. Remember earlier on when we went into regions, we had Central and South ticked. What if that's the only thing I care about? And every time I come to this dashboard, I don't want to have to reselect these two things. So what I can do is I can actually go to this little view option here, and I can name this North and South. And I can actually make it my default. So every time I come to this visualization, it loads this North and South version first. Okay, I'm going to hit save. What it does is it actually creates a nice version just for me. And I can know that. If I look at the URL here, you can see that it's gone really, really long. And the other thing to note is that this little tab here saying view North and South has changed to tell me that I'm looking at a different version of the same thing. If I click on it, I can actually go back to the original one. You can see that the original one was created by me, of course. If I click on that, it takes me back to the default one. So if you want to go back to what everyone else is looking at, you can. And if I go here and I select my version, you can see that it loads up there just fine. Now you can see that it is a default. So what that means is if I go back out to, let's say, this export test tab here, and I go back into my overview, it's going to look at my credentials and it's going to figure out that, hey, I'm Tim, and I actually prefer the North and South version every single time. And it actually tells me up here. So this is what this is actually for. Essentially, you're saving a custom view for yourself based on the original visualization to save you having to go and change a bunch of filters and do a bunch of things that you don't need to do. If I go back and I go back into the original one, you'll also see things like the filters and the order dates are completely different. If I go back into the North and South, you can see that the order dates and profit ratio are set up slightly differently as well. So it's a nice way of saving these things and sort of looking at them in the future. Now, the last one here is going to be data changes. This essentially notifies you if there have been any changes to the data or in the dashboard. And this is basically based on analysis. Now, at this moment in time, this is still a fairly new feature. So don't worry too much about this. I'll probably cover this in a separate video. But just to be aware, more and more features can get added to this toolbar over time. So as this video ages, so will its currency. So be sure to check out other videos on my channel to find out more about things like this as and when they're announced. The last thing is the data detail. So when I click on this, I get a little bit of metadata about the data being used here. So you can see that I can see that this is in this workbook. It's in the samples project. The author was me. The exact date it was modified. It was modified a few minutes ago because I changed the alerts and the settings. I can actually see the data source that it's connected to. So you can see here it's connected to sample EU Superstore. If I scroll down, I even get a view of the individual metrics. So I can go into profit ratio, for example, and I can see what the calculation looks like. So as a viewer, this is really nice because if I have any doubts about how something's been done and that metadata is available in Tableau, I can actually get to the bottom of that. So I can see here how the profit ratio is calculated, and I can actually select something called view more. And it takes me off to another place where I can actually see something called the lineage. Now, in this particular setup, because I'm a viewer, I'm actually getting a few sort of errors here, but nonetheless, this is quite useful because I can actually start to understand more about what's going on with my data set. But again, this is for another day. Don't worry too much about this. I just wanted to show you that you can dig into these features a bit more. If I keep going down, you can see that other fields are also available. If I look at my order dates, you can see there's nothing there because no description or anything has been set up. Ideally, authors should be setting these up as well. So be sure to make sure that if you want these descriptions and you think they're useful, make sure the author is setting them up appropriately when they're creating the workbook. So that's pretty much everything in the toolbar and everything in the dashboard. The key thing to remember is that essentially really try and lean on any guides that have been created for the dashboard. That's going to be the fastest way to find out what the dashboard can do and what the interface items can do. I've only shown you a fraction of the interface items. There's so many more available. Things like parameters, set actions, parameter actions. All these are fantastic features that authors use to make things really interactive and smart. But they do require a little bit of awareness. And so the author really needs to tell you exactly what they do and how to use them. Because if you use them incorrectly, then they can actually break your visualizations as well. So be sure to check that out. Okay, this has been a long video. I hope you find it useful. I really hope I'm not the only one who makes videos about how to use a Tableau dashboard. I'm sure other people will be making them as well. If I've missed anything in this video, or maybe there's something blatantly obvious that you think should be in this video, let me know, and I'm sure we can make another video to fill the gap. But thank you for watching, and if this is the first time you found the channel, be sure to subscribe, like, and let me know what you'd like to see more of about Tableau. If you're brand new to Tableau, check out my explainer on Tableau. It's had over a quarter, it's on its way to 500,000 views on YouTube, which is crazy. So if you haven't seen it, be sure not to miss out on that and check it out as well. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.